So let's say the stock market crashed tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your explanation as to why?
To why it crashed tomorrow?
Yeah.
I guess the way the stocks are being handled, or just how the economy's been in general in the past couple of years.
Okay. Um, do you think truth is created or discovered?
Discovered.
Okay. Can you give me an example of two truths, one of which is more discovered than the other?
One which is more discovered than the other. Um. Hmm.
Or is it just binary? Something's either discovered or it's not.
No, I see what you're getting at. I think there's a spectrum, I guess you could say. Like if I say, uh, hmm. Like, okay, if you were to say, like, it takes, hmm.
It takes one to know one.
Okay.
Is that discovered
Hmm.
or created?
I think that's more of an idea that, I mean,
Okay. How about uh, Honey Crisp apples are edible by humans?
well, we would have to have, done the action to see if it was, right? To see if it was like non-poisonous or was able to be consumed.
Okay. How about this? Um, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to make it to hear it fall to make a sound, is a question that relies on contradictory premises. One, that somebody is in the forest to report the fact that a tree has fallen, and then two,
Yeah.
that no one's reported the fact that the tree has fallen. No one is available to report the fact the tree has fallen. So
Mm-hmm.
it asks, well, how would we even know in the first place that a tree had fallen if there wasn't an observer? So asking the question, um, is an observed action, imagine this observed action had no observer, would it be different? Is using contradictory premises. Now, if you, I don't know, if let's just agree for the sake of argument that, in fact, that is an example of contradictory premises, and that as a consequence, it invalidates the argument as a whole. What about the truth of that statement? The statement that contradictory premises invalidate an argument as a whole.
What is the truth of that statement?
Yeah.
Um, so then that means that neither of them could be true. Well, no.
But,
Well,
but I'm saying regarding my statement about contradictions. So the law of
okay.
non-contradiction says is not that two things can never both be and not be in the same time, place, and context. In other words, if you have contradictory premises, like premise
Mm-hmm.
one, Judy has an orange. Premise two, it is not the case
Okay.
that Judy has an orange, and then you draw conclusions from those two premises. Then
Yeah.
it's the argument. The conclusions you draw are always valid but unsound, which is to say, you can prove anything if you allow for contradictory premises, but none of the things you prove are soundly proven.
So then would
But
that mean that the conclusion is not true?
not
Well, like,
necessarily.
well,
So I could say,
well, wait.
I, all men are mortal. I'm a man, therefore I love pancakes. If I love pancakes, the conclusion is
That could
correct.
be true, but it didn't derive from
It
the
didn't
premises you
follow from the
gave.
previous things. So what I'm
Yeah.
asking you is, are those kind of truths, ones that are logical truths, are those more or less discovered than say truths about magma spewing from a volcano is too hot to touch.
Okay, well then those are just like universal truths. Those are true, like those are not discovered because like we had to discover that magma was too hot to touch for us to know not to touch it because it's too hot to touch. But with like the contradiction, that's more of like that would be true either way.
How much of your knowledge do you think can be said to not stem directly from experience? Do you know anything that you don't know from experience?
That I don't know from experience. Well, I guess this is where like subjectivity comes in. I mean, like I think that I would, even if I didn't have experience, like I feel like I would know how to respond to something or how I would feel or what I would think about something without having experience. But that's like with me personally. But like knowledge that is like outside of myself, I don't think so.
Okay. Which job would you rather have? Fence installer and repairer. To say if somebody's got a few slats from their fence have broken off, you go and you get some new slats, cut them to size, nail them there, fix the fence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hold on. Thank you, Dad. I got another present. Okay. Or party hostess. So you've got to be in charge of. You work at a hotel and you have various conventions of businessmen or whatever come in, and you've got to. I am here to make sure all of your business needs are met. If you need another pad of paper, I'll bring it. If you want me to set up some melons here, I've got some lovely cantaloupes for us to all eat. That kind of a job. And you got to schmooze with people a lot.
Probably. Neither of them sound great. Probably the second one. Just
okay.
because it's like being around people, but I mean, I wouldn't choose that as a job if I had the choice, but that one over the first one.
School teacher or drill sergeant?
Oh, God. I guess a school teacher?
Okay. If you had to be a school teacher, what grade would you teach and what subjects?
If I had to be a teacher, either I'd probably teach like 10th or 11th grade. And then I would teach either math or philosophy.
Okay.
Or like debate, which could be like with philosophy, but yeah.
Okay. What's your position on morality in general? Is it a relativist position that there's no real singular true morality? It just depends on your cultural mores, or that some cultural mores are inherently wicked if they violate some kind of prescription on mia, or what's your moral framework?
I mean, I do think that like, obviously you can view something as good or bad and I can view it differently, but I feel like there's kind of just like with logic, there's kind of like some universal things like, don't kill anybody. It's wrong to steal from someone and just basic stuff like that. But then you could get into like the more detailed thing, like, oh, is it appropriate to say this word, or like what kind of tone should I use, or how should should I say thank you, like stuff like that.
So what do you think the standard is for universality?
For
what,
mine?
Yeah, like what makes something differentiate between it would be nice if you did that versus it's a universal moral obligation to do or not do something.
Okay, well, I'll give you an example. I think that I guess because I've had like issues with this in my friendships, I think like if you're going to ask someone to do something for you, it's not that like okay, it's not that you have to do it back for them, but don't ask someone to do something for you that you wouldn't do yourself or that you wouldn't do for them, especially if you're able to do it. Like, if you're not able to do it, that's different. But if you're able to do something for someone, then I feel like don't ask for things that you would never do in return.
Hey, could you pick up that steaming pile of dog shit with your hands for me, real quick? I don't have any gloves. I don't want to touch it. Like that, you mean?
No, I mean, no, because, okay, I'm not going to do that, so I'm not going to expect you to do that. But, like, if you ask me, like, can you do this small favor for me? It could be anything. It could be
Mackenzie,
like,
real quick, can you get me a beer from the fridge, please, real quick?
yeah, I would do that.
Like that? Is that what you're talking about? Is that an example?
Like I would do that. But that's the thing. Like, it's almost just like it's just like a reciprocating type thing. Like, not necessarily that you have to do exactly the same thing that I do and the value has to be the exact same, because I know it's not always going to be that way, but just don't expect someone, there's a lot of people who feel entitled or just get comfortable, so they just think that since you're a good friend that you're just going to do whatever for them, but then when you ask for one little thing in return, they have all these reasons and justifications as to why they shouldn't have to do that thing for you, when the real reason is because they don't want to. So they make up all these reasons and then they contradict each other, and then it doesn't make any sense. And then it's like when you use that same reason, then they're like, oh, wait, you're wrong. So it's like you told me that my reasoning was wrong, but you're using the same reasoning that I use. So how did, it's just,
Okay.
I don't know.
So, yeah. Let's say that you could persist in a 2-month unfair relationship. Let's say, in other words, you are sent to a training camp for a new job where you're learning to be an astronaut, and you're sharing a room with Susie, who is not fair at all. And so, in other words, she's always there's one dresser that's got 5 drawers in it. She takes 3 of them. There's one shelving in the bathroom that's got 5 shelves on it. She takes 3 of them. There's one shelf in the kitchen that's got 5 shelves on it. She takes 3 of them. There's one room that's bigger by a 5-to-3 ratio than the other room. She takes the bigger room. All the way down the line. Every single thing she picks what's advantageous to her should be unfair. Now, you're told, listen, I know this bitch is super unfair, but if you can avoid getting bothered by that for the next 2 months for the duration of this and just let her have her unfairnesses without complaint, then at the end, you will be on the cover of Time magazine as our nation's most enduring and patient astronaut candidate. And you'll get a lot of praise for that. Won't get any money for it, but you get a lot of praise for that. And people will see you as, wow, she can really make a decision fall through and be cool, even though the person sounds really irritating. If at the end of 2 months you could cash in your not busting chops or fixing the unfairness for 2 long months, then would you think that was a worth it deal?
No.
Not a worth it deal.
No.
Okay.
I probably would have said a yes when I was younger, but no, because, No, that's not worth it.
What do you feel better able to manage? What do you feel better? What do you feel better able to manage? Other people's perceptions of you as competent, or other people's perceptions of you as warm?
You said as confident and then as warm?
Competent versus warm.
Oh,
so it's like one way of breaking down human reality is that everybody basically evaluates everybody else on 2 fundamental metrics: competence and warmth. And that most people have an easier time with one than the other. So it's easier for me to be perceived as competent than it is for me to be perceived as warm. It's easier for Rachel to be perceived as warm than it is for her to be perceived as competent. Of course, remember, this is other people's perceptions. They have nothing to do with your actual warmth or competency.
Yeah. I guess, I want to give an exact answer, but I would probably say it does also still depend on, what group of people, but a couple of years ago, probably warmth, and not that I'm the most competent person, as you can tell now, but now I'm not as warm as I used to be. So
I mean, I don't
not
view you as lacking competence at all. So I would have answered the question. You probably have an easier time convincing people you're competent than you do convincing them that you're warm.
oh, thank Jesus.
That's how I would have answered it. If you had asked me what I think. But okay. It seems pretty clear that you feel as though the world is not either recognizing or appreciating your use of logic and or logic, the existence of logic in general, and that this bothers you. Does it bother you because it interferes with your ability to communicate, or for some other reason?
Um, and are you referring to the example that I just gave 5 minutes ago about the like reciprocation? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and then they give contradictory reasons as to why.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the thing. So, and I'm gonna be honest when I say this. Like, off, like I'm not the most like I'm a pretty good friend in the sense that here's the thing. So I can be a bitch sometimes, right? And like sometimes a hypocrite because we all can be. But I think the problem that I have with it is like, yeah, okay, if you give me a reason as to why you don't want to do something, then it may piss me off and I may not agree with it and I may still think that you're shitty for doing that, which is fine. But then when we start arguing about it and it's like you start changing your stance and then but if I did the same thing as you would give me the same reason that I gave you as to why I shouldn't be doing something, but when I gave you that reason, you like put all these points and knocked it down. It's like I don't. It's like just you can be a hypocrite, but don't start contradicting yourself and then like telling me that my reasoning doesn't make sense when you obviously think that that is at least good enough of a point to use against me when you're in the same shoes that I'm in now. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes perfectly good sense. Um, it's interesting. Benjamin Sadek had a person he was interviewing today on his interview show, and the person asked that question. Does that make sense? And I was already mad. I was already mad that he was going to answer the question wrong because the fact was it made no sense what this fucker was saying. But I was underestimating Benjamin. His answer was no. I mean, it was just that too. It was like the guy's like, "Does that make sense?"
Wait, so the guy asked a question or he made a statement?
No. So first of all, the guy said a bunch of stuff like you just did, explained a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
and then asked, "Does that make sense?" Except,
And then
unlike
your
in this
friend said,
instance, the
yeah.
answer was yes. That makes sense. What you're saying it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. I know exactly what you're talking about. In that instance, what the guy had been saying made no sense at all, and I was pleasantly surprised that Benjamin, when asked the question, "Does that make sense?" correctly said, "No, it does not." Because
Yeah.
usually people will kind of schmooze around that and go,
You're like, yeah.
"Well,
Well,
I get where you're coming from, but no, you're talking nonsense." It was the correct answer.
so it didn't make sense to you either.
No, it
What?
did. Yeah, it just genuinely, it was him being mushy about language and not making any sense, frankly, and trying to portray Ti as this or that or the other thing. But anyway, all right. So I wanted to ask you, um, what do you express yourself in any media? Like maybe you're painting, music, writing, drama, like acting, making videos, uh, whatever else I didn't name. Being a radio broadcaster, I don't know. Whatever kind of medium you can think of.
Um, no, I'm gonna be honest. I don't have a lot of talent, like at all. I mean, obviously you can work towards that, but like, no, I don't really have any way of expressing myself more than just like when I'm talking to people and just telling them what I like, what I don't like, all this and that. But as far as like stuff to show, no.
If you're maximally attained in life, in other words, all of a sudden you you know you imagine like you have a whole year worth of free montage to use. Okay, so you can get so much shit done in a year's worth of montage, right? Because you can get like weeks or even months of things done over the course of just one song's worth of time. Um, so anyway, you have the power of montage for a year. to really move things forward in your life without having to put any actual effort into it.
Hmm.
Explain to me how you use your power of montage.
Oh, just how like what I would make come true without having to work towards it.
Yeah, so if you wanted to montage something, like maybe you would say, well, I want to become a excellent skier, so I'd montage ski training for 3 months.
Okay.
We've got one
Um.
1 year to spend on montaging things.
Okay. So a singer.
Okay.
Um. Probably. I'm just gonna go with the basics. I mean, those are things that most people would probably want. So a singer, being good at an instrument, being able to draw decently, being able to dance, like all of those things I would love to do. I just don't put in the time and effort to do it, but to make it happen.
How's your pitch?
I mean, I don't really know how to assess it because I'm not, you know, I'm not knowledgeable in that area and how it should sound, but I think it's okay. It's my dad is a musician, so like he's kind of helping me work through it, and he said that it's pretty good, but it's like not consistent.
Hmm.
It's not consistently good. It's like some days it's good, other days it's not. It goes back and forth.
Hmm. Of course, ultimately, as long as you can get a good recording of you singing a part where you get each section of the thing you're singing not pitchy, then
Hmm.
pitch isn't an issue. Pitch is just an
Yeah.
issue in the sense that if if you have to record somebody once and you go, okay, these parts are fine, but these parts are pitchy, then you record it again
Hmm.
and you replace those. It's not that big of a deal. But if you're going to be
Yeah.
performing live, it's a different matter, right? Because then you got to be
Yeah.
kind of on point all the time.
Yeah. And that's where the stage fright comes in.
Does your dad perform live a lot?
Well, so my dad doesn't sing, but he does play the piano. I think that's the only instrument that he really plays is the piano, but he's really good at it. He can learn a song like extremely fast and just know how to play it by listening by ear, which I'm sure a lot of musicians can, but yeah, he's been playing for a while, so.
Okay, so I think I'm going to get some pushback on this. Hopefully you let me publish these videos. But I'm pretty sure you're an ESTP.
ESTP?
Yeah. And
Okay,
did you think coming in you were an ENTP?
no.
Okay.
Actually, what I thought, and because, okay, I know that the MBTI test is not, I know it's just a questionnaire, so it's not as in depth as what we're doing right now. And I also know that, like, C.S. Joseph is probably not the best person to reference. You know what I mean? Not that I haven't had a typing session with him, but I did do his little assessment, right?
Uh-huh.
So I have almost always scored as an ENFP. And the reason why I don't think that I have extroverted sensing is because and I don't know if this is a good indicator, because this is pretty much what I've learned from him and just like researching it, is like I'm not, like I am extremely clumsy and it's like, also I'm a terrible driver. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I'm extremely clumsy and I'm just like not aware of my surroundings. And that's why I kind of thought I was like an extroverted intuition. I don't know about dominant, but somewhere in the stack. And I know that like I probably didn't show that during this typing session.
Oh, well,
because,
let's
like,
explore
all these
that. Let's
questions.
explore that thing right there a little bit. So,
Okay.
um, the main reason I excluded the possibility of you being an extroverted intuition dom or tool was because extroverted intuition dominant or tool typically does very well on inky pinkies. But here's other kinds of extroverted intuition tests I might give. It would be like 1,000 times 1,000 makes a man so glad. Complete the aphorism.
1,000 times 1,000 makes a man so glad. If it didn't work out for me, oh, I'd be so sad. Um,
Okay, now complete it in a different way. 1,000 times 1,000 makes a man
okay,
so glad.
1,000 times 1,000 makes a man so glad. Every night I fall asleep, the only person I say I love you to is my loving dad.
Okay, that's fine. How many synonyms can you think of for the word terrible?
Um, terrible and parable, shareable.
Not rhymes, synonyms. Words that mean the same thing.
Synonyms. God. See, that's what I mean.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, synonyms. Oh, terrible, horrible, awful, uh, like a monstrosity, but atrocious.
Okay, let me try the invention game. So I've made a new invention. I'm constantly making new inventions. This new invention is a carton of grapefruit juice that has attached to it a pill cutter, and its reasoning is that it wants to give the middle finger to those drugs that say avoid grapefruit.
Okay.
Because it's a strike back by the grapefruit industry, saying no, go ahead and take your drugs with grapefruit. All right, that's how I'm thinking. That's what this invention is. But the only name I can come up with for it is grapefruit juice carton with pill cutter attached, and marketing says that name won't sell any product. Can you help me come up with several names to name this product that are more snappy?
Well, we could go with the overused one. The grapefruit cutter 3000. And I'm sorry, tell me again the purpose of this tool.
Well, it's a carton of grapefruit juice. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
And it has one of these pill cutters attached to it.
Oh, okay.
This lets you cut a pill in half. So
okay.
Basically, it's encouraging you to go ahead and take your drugs with grapefruit, even though they might say avoid grapefruit on them.
Instead of like, okay, you said it encourages, so I immediately thought of the drug courager.
The drug courager is a great name for a superhero. The drug courager. He goes around and encourages people to take drugs.
Yeah, probably not so much for a little mechanical thing, but.
Okay. So, what would you? Let's see here. If you were going to ask me extroverted intuition questions, knowing that the goal here is to make me display the extent to which I can come up with divergent ideas on the fly and can continue to come up with possibilities and stuff. What kind of question would you ask?
Okay. So, how many different ways could you come up with making the number 1,000? So, like, you could do 500 times 2, or like 3,000 divided by 3, like something like that.
That's a good question. Yeah. Sure. Okay, how many different ways can you think of to use a brick?
To use a brick?
Yeah.
Okay, well, are you asking me to answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay, so I could make a house. I could kill somebody with it. I could use it as, like, if I found a way to use it as like a shelf on the wall for a book or a picture. You could use it as, I don't know, like, I guess a chimney is part of the house. I don't know. Well, like the inside, like, what else is there?
Okay, so what happens when you watch or look up stuff read about stuff about cognitive functions and typology and stuff? How do you read it? Do you read it looking for things about typology that might be useful in the world in some way, like this could be useful at work, or do you read it in terms of things about it, things that you read that you can agree with, or do you read it looking for things that you read that sound like bullshit, or something else?
Honestly, like, okay, so when I watch C.S. Joseph or you, or like look up people on Reddit, I'm looking for specific things that would help me to understand it better, like in relation to myself, because that would help me understand like it as a whole better, but also like to help me understand like the people around me better and just like how people work in general. So like I'll look up like the difference between TI and TE, or like what is like TI polar or NI polar, stuff like that, just to see like how it manifests in someone and like what does that look like in me. And because also like, well, I was going to ask you this question earlier, like what is the difference between having, like, how would you know if someone has okay, so like that question you asked me, the logic question earlier about like if P and Q then S or something like that. So I knew the answer to that because I had taken logic before. So that was like applied knowledge that I had remembered basically. But who's to say that I would have known the answer to that if I had never taken that class? I mean, it was a simple question.
Okay, but see, that wasn't the only kind of TI question I asked. And once I learned that you'd taken a logic class, I sort of veered away from those logic classy kind of questions. But the thing is, the genealogy question is also a TI question. If you were an ENFP and I were to ask you the question, who is my mother's only daughter's husband's only son in relationship to me? Who is that person?
Who is my mother's daughter's only son in relation to me?
Yeah.
So you just said? Okay. My mother's daughter's only son, which is yourself, right?
Right. Okay. So ENFPs can't do that.
Well, to be fair, there was one session or video that you did. I think it was about like how C.S. Joseph is an ENTJ and not an ENTP, and you were talking about logic and like the ISFP and the ESFP and how they wouldn't have been able to answer some certain question that you asked. So I had heard you ask a question like that before. So
yeah, but you haven't. But the thing is, that's not how you answered it. So in other words, you didn't remember the answer when I started the question. If I say, like, when did Columbus discover America? You remember the answer.
1492.
Right. When I ask you, who is my mother's only daughter's only son, you don't remember it because you don't remember that. Because every time I ask that question, sometimes it's me, sometimes it's my mom, sometimes it's my dad, sometimes it's my aunt. True. So the thing is, what you did, and I watched you do it, is go, okay, my mother's mother, that's my grandmother, then her daughter is my mother, and then her son is you again, right, Eric? That's using TI to figure it out.
Okay.
ENFPs and ESFPs can't do that. And so if you read a piece of legal language somewhere, a contract or something like that, do you feel capable of understanding what it means?
Yeah. I mean, I could get the gist of it. If there's like a bunch of words that I don't know, then it would be difficult to learn. But I could look up those words and then use context clues and yada yada yada.
So if someone would say, Mackenzie, I can't tell if this requires me to give them my liver or not. Can you read it and tell me? Would you be able to tell?
Yeah, I'd be able to. Yeah, I'd be able to. Yeah, I can read. If that's your simple question, I can read.
Surprisingly, when it comes to legal language of any sort, or very precise TI style language, ENFPs basically can't read. Which is to say, I've talked to ENFPs before who were very successful and have great successful businesses and stuff, but they always say, well, when it comes to any kind of legal language stuff, that's just all Greek to me. I just hand it over to Bob.
Well, can you give me an example of like, well, I don't know if you would know, like a legal language sentence?
Okay, sure. So,
okay.
We're going to try to figure out, in this instance, whether person A is the plaintiff or person B is the plaintiff. Okay? And I'll tell you right now that person A was in a green car and person B was a pedestrian. Okay?
Okay.
So, the party with cause to sue here, the party for a party to have cause to sue in this instance, it is not necessary that the party establish clear causal link between the harm incurred and any physical event having instigated that, it is sufficient to show that if one of the two parties were engaged in a persistent pattern of harassment, that their appearance caused the heart attack in question. The party of the plaintiff would only need to establish that they had good reason to know that the harasser was indeed the person they believed them to be. So, who's likely the plaintiff here, and what's going on?
Honestly, that was a lot of words at once.
Okay.
So the harasser, someone got hit. What was it?
Well, there's a pedestrian in this story. There's a pedestrian and there's a guy in a green car.
Okay, pedestrian.
And here's an excerpt from the case.
Okay. Sorry, I need to turn this volume up a little bit.
Let's see. Deny the defense motion to dismiss. It is not, in fact, the case that the plaintiff needs to establish any physical contact occurred in order to establish a causal link between the appearance of the offending party and the ensuing heart attack.
Okay, so are you saying that? Okay, so are you saying that the defendant, is like, okay, so a heart attack happened? Is that what you're saying? At the end, you said something about a heart attack?
I did.
Okay, so then I'm sorry, it was hard to follow.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's legal language, right? So what I'm saying is, Judge, deny the objection of my opponent because they're claiming that in order for them to be responsible for something, there has to have been a clear physicality to the event. Namely, there have to be a physical...
Like evidence to show that they caused what happened?
Right. And what I'm saying is that's not the case that the cause has to be physical contact. I'm saying that the appearance of the offending party, the appearance of the offending party is sufficient to be said to have caused the event, provided I can establish a pattern of harassment and fear-mongering, to which the plaintiff was involuntarily, through which the plaintiff was involuntarily triggered into this life-threatening health event. So, what do you think? What can you tell me?
So how the plaintiff or how the defendant could have caused this to happen without.
Well, I'm asking. Provide me some sort of scenario. Now that you've heard this excerpt from the case.
Okay.
Provide me some sort of scenario in which it makes sense that they'd be making this argument.
Okay. Well, they're saying that there's no possible way that they could have been responsible for it because of the fact that there was no physical evidence.
No physical contact.
No physical contact. I wouldn't know how to prove that side. It'd be easier to prove the other side, but
what's a theory of what's a scenario that could account for this?
That
Okay. You come home. You discover that there's a dead naked man hanging in your bathroom,
Okay.
and you also see that there is a something written on the bathroom window in lipstick in strange language that you've never seen before and can't understand. Strange symbols that you've never seen before and can't understand. In
Okay.
addition, there's a pulsing light that you now notice from from the room down the hall. That is like some
Mhm.
lights on, lights off, lights on, lights off. Okay. What might have happened while you were gone today to work?
Okay, well, obviously, well, he could have, no, he probably didn't hang himself. So, I guess someone hung this person and then wrote something on the window. And the fact that the light's flickering, gosh, well, what would be the cause of that? I mean, that could possibly have nothing to do with the scenario that's happening in the bathroom, but that could also be like maybe they got in a fight and like maybe they were like the person was struggling or like trying to struggle to get away and then somehow they tripped over a wire and like the shortage cut or something like that. Is that a possible theory?
Sure. I've got my
Okay,
own
great.
theory. I've got my own theory. My theory is that
Okay.
this hanging was not self-induced. It was not suicide. The guy
Yeah.
actually has his hands tied behind his back, but it also didn't occur here at your house. It occurred nearly 700 miles away, but it was committed by a CIA agent who is in direct communication with aliens and has gleaned from them uh, a basically a teleportation spell. He wrote those very symbols on a mirror back at Langley because he's CIA, you know. And then the whole scene of the crime, quote unquote, was transmitted to your house. Except the only thing that they ended up actually transmitting was just the rope and the body. Now the rope they ended up transmitting to hang on the light bulb in the ceiling in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
This was causing an electrical problem, which is why the lights in the bedroom were flicking on and off. And why did the guy get killed? Well, he was a reporter who had been on the scent of this alien CIA connection story and had gotten too close. He had threatened to go public with the big news, but despite the fact that the CIA directors and everything said, "Hey, we got to be above board," he went rogue and killed the guy. Now it's my chance to enter into the case and chase after him on an action adventure. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, that is fun, and that's your proof of, or your proof of extroverted intuition
No,
and
I
my
was just
lack thereof.
no, I actually didn't mean anything by that at all.
Oh, okay.
I just got enamored with the question. I thought, I wonder what
Uh,
that does connect those things. Okay, so
well, but see, I wasn't able to come up with something great like that.
well, I mean, look, I don't know if that's great or not. I'm just saying, uh, the point I would make is this seems to be an NI skill, not an NE skill that I'm demonstrating here.
What you just did?
Yeah,
Why is that an? Well, I mean, I guess because like you're taking all of the clues and then thinking of a possible
you're
like
making them fit
exact
together into
point.
one thing, right?
Okay,
You're making them
so
collapse down into one explanation, one singularity.
okay, so okay, well then, so would when you ask like about NE, would you ask like would you, if you were doing this differently, would you give like one opening sentence of what a possible story could be, and then I would like fill in the blank and just make up a story based off of like one detail that you would give, if that makes sense?
Yeah,
Like
we
if you're
we
saying
could do
like,
that.
oh, someone's driving down the road, and then you see to the left of you like 3 trucks crash into each other, like what caused it, why, and then what happens after that, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I
Would that
mean,
be
make up
more
a
like
story like that. That's one way to do it. Or the poem thing I was
okay?
trying to do earlier. Or demo something and then say, can you do this too? Let's see, poetry thing. And then I'll share this page right here. Share the meow with the meow and the meow. All right, so be like, okay, give me a noun, um, a verb, and an adjective.
Okay, light bulb, um, sprint, and captivating.
Rather to go to Grace Tossling, where clothing others ceased uh, where clothing our clothing stuff became an empty husk. All right, and then and light bulbs had still yet to be invented. So laborers constrained themselves today these women wanted rather now to party, and so en masse they up and went away. Okay. If I had done that better, I would have got all 3 words in one stanza. But I couldn't figure out how to get light bulbs in there in the first stanza. So I had to do 2 stanzas to do it. You try to beat me, I'll give you 3 words.
Okay. Gosh.
Um.
You want me to like write it down?
Yeah, just get your own Google Doc open or on a piece of paper or whatever, and you write down these 3 words, okay?
Okay.
I give you easy words to use. Let's see.
And do you want it to be as long as yours?
No, I'm saying
Like,
ideally it's one stanza. You can fit all 3 words in one stanza. I pushed it to 2 because I couldn't think of a quick way to get light bulb into the first one.
Okay.
All right, so the 3 words I'm going to give you are bear cat, knead, like knead dough, and the adjective is urgent. Oh, you know what?
Okay.
Let me look at my calendar. Yeah, I have a 6 o'clock. Just to let you know, I'm gonna have to end this really soon. I'm pretty sure. Well, you're one of 2 types, and it's weird that I can't distinguish between these 2. But I'm pretty sure you're an ESTP.
A what?
I still am pretty sure you're an ESTP.
What was the other type?
Well, it's at first I thought you were an ESFJ, but I don't think you are. You're not. You're definitely not an ENFP. You're definitely FETI and not FITE. There's no chance you're FITE. You're super FE. In fact, I think you're. According to the very first test I gave you, the thing about the drowning a puppy or a kitten thing. According to that test, and homie, you are FI polar, same as me. Which means if that's correct, you're either ESTP or ENTP, and you're not an ENTP.
Okay.
So,
interesting.
I'm gonna have this person come in like 3 minutes, so I'm gonna have to end this video. Are you cool with me publishing these videos?